Earlier, we talked about relationships and how when a person doesn't want to be in your life and a person doesn't want to give you the love that you desire and the commitment that you desire, I talked about letting go. And you have to do that. You shouldn't want anybody in your life who doesn't want to be there. At this time, I want to address a specific relationship, and the specific relationship is marriage. Marriage is one of the few relationships that two people are in that requires a lot more work, because you just can't end a marriage relationship just like that and just go on with your life. You know, when you make those vows in the beginning where we say, I promise to be with you through sickness, through health, through good times, bad times, the good, the bad, whatever it is, to death do us part. That's biblical. God expects a man and a woman who's married to stay together through everything that they could possibly go through. I don't care what it is. And there's nothing that can happen in a marriage relationship where you have to leave each other. God gives you an option, but even with that option, it's a choice. God expects a different type of element in a marriage relationship than he does when two people are just in a relationship who may be dating or something like that. In Matthew chapter 19, the Pharisees came to Jesus and they were talking to Jesus about marriage. And they were trying to trap him. And they said this to him in Matthew chapter 19, verse 3. They said, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any reason?" And he said to them, "Have you not read? He who made them from the beginning made a male and female, and said, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. They are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let not man put asunder." And so Jesus was defining what marriage is. He was defining the commitment, the relationship, the coming together, the molding, if you will, by God in this marriage. And these Pharisees who lived under the law of Moses, where divorce for any reason was permitted, they responded in verse 7 by saying, well, why did Moses allow divorce for any reason? And Jesus says in verse 8, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, allowed it. But from the beginning, it was not so. And then in verse 9, he says, and I say unto you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery. And whoever marries her who is divorced commits adultery. Jesus says, listen, I know under the old law, Moses allowed you all to divorce for any reason. But that wasn't the way it was supposed to be from the beginning of time. And so Jesus says, I say unto you that whoever divorces his wife except for unfaithfulness and marries somebody else, you commit adultery. What he was saying is the commitment and the desire to stay together and to work it out in marriage is totally different. In marriage, you just cannot let go when you feel like it. You just can't let go and say, I'm through with it just because you don't want to be there, just because your spouse doesn't look the way they used to look, smell the way they used to smell, cook the way they used to cook, act the way they used to act. You just can't do that in marriage like you can in a regular relationship when you're dating someone. It's a lifelong commitment, and the apostles knew it. That's why the apostles in verse number 10 said this. If this is the case with a man, it's better not to get married. It's better not to get married. They said, this is too much of a commitment here. It's best for us to stay single. And Jesus responded in verse number 12 by saying, yes, but everybody can't receive that saying. Verse 11, he says, everybody can't do that. Why? Because some people are gifted. Some people, in verse number 12, he said, there are some eunuchs, meaning there are some people that don't have to be married. He said, there are some people who were born that way. He says, there are some people who were made that way by men through surgical procedures or whatever the case may be. Then he said, some people who have made themselves that way also for the sake of the kingdom. But everybody's not like that. Some people need a companion. Some people need someone in their life. Another verse I want to read to you is in Romans chapter 7, where Paul talks about marriage, and he defines the longevity of marriage. Romans chapter 7 and verse number 2, he says, for a woman who has a husband is bound by law to her husband as long as he lives. But if her husband dies, she is released from the law of her husband. If our spouse becomes unfaithful, or if our Jesus says you have an option to leave if you want to. You don't have to, but you can leave. If our spouse passes away, we have the option to go ahead and whether the relationship then is already been dissolved through death, but we have an option to continue on with our life. And so I don't want to go into all the different situations about what if this happened and what if this that. I don't answer questions like that. I read what the Bible says and I let you make your own informed decision. But I don't get into all the scenarios of what if this and what if that and what if this and what if that. All you need to understand is this right here. Before you say I do to marriage, ask yourself, are you willing to commit the time and energy it takes into, number one, building a marriage, and number two, struggling through everything that comes with being married? Because you just can't let marriage go like you can let a relationship of dating go. God bless you.